I have a report done by the Legal Defense Fund that was organized at the time of our clinic raid that lists over 20 raids done by FDA on clinics, vitamin manufacturers, and so on between the years 1985 and 1993. It's a long list. It's very sad, and it's, of course, a total waste of everyone's tax dollars.
The Life Extension Foundation has been battling FDA censorship for the past 24 years. As a result, when people are attacked by the FDA who are offering legitimate dietary supplements to the public, we're often the first people that they call. We assist them with finding attorneys that can help them. And we also hear the horror stories. We hear of people whose businesses are shut down, who are facing bankruptcy because of the attorney's fees that they're facing. We hear of people who are facing long prison sentences simply for telling the public the truth about what a dietary supplement may do to prevent or treat a disease.
Alternative practitioners have been sanctioned and harassed pretty much throughout history, but certainly in the last 30 or 40 years when they deviate from so-called standard medical care. The physicians who focus attention on the environment, on dealing with toxicity, on dealing with nutritional factors, dealing with lifestyle factors to try to help people long-term, are often ridiculed, harassed, and even brought up on charges where some of them will wind up losing their licenses for relatively minor infractions.
Back in 1945, Time magazine had a famous little article about the benefits of vitamin E in preventing heart conditions and in helping heart health. And from 1945 until the time the AMA finally admitted that vitamin E had an important role to play in promoting heart health, 50 million Americans died of preventable heart disease. You know, this Holocaust was basically promoted by people who were not willing to look at advances in science, who are not willing to look at the lifestyle changes that people in the alternative community have supported for decades.
Just when we believed it was safe to change our lifestyle, eat healthy foods, to lose weight, and to feel good about ourselves and take our supplements, up comes Codex Alimentarius. It's been about 7 years. Now it's getting to the final stages, and even though it's in Europe, we better pay close attention because it could impact our freedoms of choice right here in the United States.
Codex Alimentarius, the World Food Code, is basically an attempt to harmonize law internationally so that trade can be smoother, can go between countries easier. But the problem is that the way they're harmonizing laws internationally, they're applying the wrong model. Our fear is that in the harmonization process, that law is going to be shortchanged. The FDA itself says on its own website that where there are international standards, our laws are going to be harmonized to those standards. Congress, however, has made it really clear vitamins, minerals, and herbs are foods, not drugs. We don't want them harmonized to those drug standards because they're not drugs.
Codex is a treaty that would control the amounts of nutrients in vitamins. In Europe, you can't get more than 60 milligrams of vitamin C in a pill. That's worthless. Vitamin C is very good at 1,000 milligram doses a gram. That's what the studies show. It has a huge benefit. If we were to adopt the rules of Europe and Canada for our vitamins, we wouldn't have vitamins.
The FDA says because we don't regulate them heavily enough, the supplements therefore could be dangerous. And yet, if you look at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, if you look at their data, it reveals that there aren't any fatalities, that there aren't any significant injuries from the use of dietary supplements, whereas adverse reactions to prescription drugs are one of the leading causes of death in this country.
I think the real impetus going back 30 years was to get drug company control of nutritional supplements. If they were prescription items, they could increase the cost. You'd have to see a doctor. It would increase income into the medical community, whereas now people can just go to their health food store and buy it. But that's the way it should be. These are supplements. These are not prescription medications. These are food supplements. They're derived essentially from food substances, so they should be over the counter.
FDA is out there trying to protect their market. On one hand, the patent medications are, on the other hand, quietly buying up many of the vitamin, mineral, and herbal companies. They know this.
One thing that concerns me is if that supplements became a prescription item, our pancreatic enzymes may no longer be available over the counter. But we use specialized enzymes that are made for us specifically in New Zealand for our program, and it would certainly complicate the issue. So I think it would be a disaster if there was a sudden law passed that made all supplements a prescription item, because that would include pancreatic enzymes, which are the essence of our program, and people's lives are at stake.
It takes a lot of exposure to educate the public, because on the other side you're dealing with a multi-billion-dollar industry that pumps out information day after day after day after day, year after year after year. And a little bit of public controversy is not going to be adequate to change public attitudes.
Prescription drugs, sell over $150 billion a year, and the profit is enormous. So if you talk about what makes the most sense, it isn't necessarily what makes the most sense that really wins the day. It's what makes the most dollars and cents that seems to win the day.
For every member of the House of Representatives, somebody in their district died because of Vioxx. Somebody in their district had a heart attack because of Vioxx. It doesn't matter whether it's a red state or a blue state. These are human beings, and what we're talking about is public health. Public health is nonpartisan.
Most Americans engage in dangerous dietary habits. They don't take the supplements they need to prevent disease. The end result is most of the Americans dying in this country today are doing so prematurely. Their lives could be dramatically extended if the information could be released.
The raid on our clinic is part of the greater war about, do we make medicines selling high-priced patented molecules which occasionally are life-saving but never really achieve any true healing? Or do we migrate towards a more natural lifestyle where we improve our diets, get some exercise, take some supplements, and in many cases achieve healing, or at least a much better state of health than we would ever achieve by taking those high-priced, money-generating patent medications?
There will always be a role for medication in medical practice, but it ought to be our last resort, not our first resort. And the problem is, when we turn to medicine as our first treatment, we get iatrogenic illnesses and deaths. The person is injured or killed by the medication that was prescribed by the doctor. We need a new mandate, and the mandate is this. Every HMO, every doctor's office, every hospital should be required, when they're writing out a prescription, to think, is there a non-medical approach that might be more effective, a non-pharmaceutical approach that might work better and mean that we don't have to go to this expense and put the patient at risk?
We're looking at a systematic failure in the entire healthcare system, with so many entities profiting of the existing system that it's very hard to effect change. But I think we can effect change. We're going to have an explosion in elderly people. Those elderly people will need health care. The costs are going to explode. People are not going to want to pay higher insurance premiums and taxes. So I think the people who watch this, together with politicians and others, can actually effect change.
I was drinking 20 cups of coffee a day, and I was using this, of course, putting in the hours and not doing any exercise or getting any energy from the food that I was eating. I was always tired. I began to feel dizzy. If I walked even more than the 3 blocks, I was out of breath when I walked the 3 blocks to the subway, but if I did any strenuous work at all, I would immediately become short of breath. I decided to check that out, and I went to my primary care physician. He gave me the blood pressure test, said that I was 150 over 110, also gave me a cardiogram, then called me into his office after he looked at the results of that and said, "Jim, we're looking at possible angioplasty." He wrote me a prescription for atenolol, which supposedly lowers your blood pressure. I called a friend, and they said, "Jim, if you're going to do something else, do it. Don't take that medicine right away, because once you're on it, and you have to keep taking it." I decided that that was kind of a wake-up call from someone telling me this is perhaps the right time to make some changes in your life before it's too late and before I have to start thinking about angioplasty. And that's when I started on what I consider my road to recovery and my road to a wholesome life. By stopping, of course, the coffee and the milk and the sugar that came with the coffee, cutting out meat completely, increasing the vegetables, starting to take the correct kind of supplements, I began to see my energy come back. Not only my energy come back, but my mental energy come back. I began to become more alert and remembering things more. Gradually, it started to reverse itself, and I began to feel, that I'm living again.
Come on. Up. Beautiful.
Today, I am 66 years old. My life is just beginning. If there's anything I've learned, it's that it does not matter what other people say or do. What matters is how I choose to react and what I choose to believe about myself.
We have to make choices. Be proactive. Get involved in your own health and those of your children. I'm Gary Knoll. Thank you very much for watching.
You've got a headache, and I've got some strange disease. Don't worry about it. This pill will set your mind at ease. It's called Progenitorivox. It's made by Squab Merle Co. It's a life-enhancing miracle, but there are some things you should know.
It may cause agitation, palpitations, excessive salivation, constipation, male lactation, rust-colored urination, hallucinations, bad vibrations, mild electric shock sensations.
But it's worth it for the drugs I need. My disease may not be fatal, but I can ease my fears by taking 2 $12 pills each day for 50 years. They've spent billions to convince me, so now I realize Progenitorivox beats diet and exercise. I've got insurance, at least for now I do. And if I bought generic, it would cut my costs in two. But I want Progenitorivox, 'cause I saw it on TV. Those families look so functional, that Paisley pills for me.
But it may cause deprivation, humiliation, debtor's prison and deportation, dark depictions, dire predictions, life as seen in Dickens fiction. Empty pockets, court dockets, may cause eyes to pop from sockets.
But it's worth it for the drugs I need.